right. Hi, James. Thanks very much for joining us today. How's it going?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Simon. Good,
Great.
good to
Great
speak to
stuff.
you.
Yeah. Great to speak to you, and thanks for coming on to the pod leaders today. Um, Today we're going to be talking about emerging trends in data-driven marketing, sort of a peek into the future. Obviously bringing James on is definitely I had a thought process and sort of line around that one, and it was really to try and get somebody that I thought had some pretty unique perspective around both working in the vendor space from an ad tech perspective and then making the transition into the MarTech space. And then most recently, actually, working within an agnostic consulting agency, if you will, being Loop Horizon. So, really looking forward to the conversation today. Hope you are too.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I've
Yeah,
been watching the series and excited to be a part of it.
No problem at all. So, firstly, thanks very much for bringing the weather back with you. I think you've most recently you're still sporting a little bit of a tan. You've been out in Turkey, haven't you? Is that right? With the
I have,
family?
just back just over a week ago now. Was out there for 10 days with the family on a nice family holiday. But I think the weather's been great. It's cooled off a little bit in recent week, but been enjoying very late summer this year, but make the most of it.
Yeah, I've heard great things about Turkey, I must admit, from a few different people. Is it something you'd recommend?
Yeah, definitely. Being a family man myself,
Yeah.
just in terms of like value for money for an all-inclusive resort. It's been brilliant. I've been there a couple of times now in a few different areas, and we're probably going to go back to a new place next year as well. So definitely for a family holiday, it's been great.
Well, there we go. A little bit of travel tips as well as digital marketing and marketing tips as well. Holiday advice. I guess, for people that don't know James, personally, I've known you for 4 or 5 years now, worked with you both, as I say, as a candidate and as a client. I think, from a sort of recruitment standpoint, I've been keeping a really, really close eye on this sort of agency model that I'm seeing emerging in the market. Loop Horizon that you work with at the moment being one, and we'll talk about this probably at length a little bit later. But I think it's really, really interesting kind of niche that's been carved out. I think partly because of the unbelievable noise in the market from so many vendors, so much choice, buyers obviously just having basically limitless options almost within each of the particular niches. But I think the insights and the knowledge that you bring to that, I'm sure, are extremely valuable to your client base. I'm sure. So really excited to kind of unpack that a bit within the show today. So I guess, like, more generally speaking, just pod leaders, if it's your first time watching or listening or watching the show, thanks very much for joining. As I kind of touched upon there, look, the reason why we set the show up is to, I guess, think about the network that we've built up over the last 10 years working in the space, me personally and as a business, and try and bring people onto the show that have pretty unique perspective. That's both from, like, today's show we're testament to is all around pre and post sales and maybe a little bit more of a technical lens on the conversation. And obviously from those 3 domains that we talked about just then, but also more broadly speaking, if you have time and are interested, there's other episodes that talk about sales leadership, sales enablement, RevOps. Next week, we're recording a really cool episode around sales development and business development. We're going to do stuff around marketing and customer success. So we're trying to build quite a varied conversation talk track on these different topics. So that's the intro, James. So sorry about a little bit of waffling there, but without further ado, I was just keen to kind of, for the people that don't know you, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about, I've put 10 years. You very kindly earlier on mentioned it might be a bit longer than that, but I didn't want to give away too much, but certainly 10 plus years of, AdTech and MarTech and other experience. Can you just bring us up to speed with a little bit about that journey and your experience, please?
Yeah, it's 20 plus years, showing my age now. Look, my grey hair does that anyway. But yeah, it's been, I guess I very first got into AdTech maybe from very early days when I was at university. This is going back, I started university in 1998 at Loughborough studying Aeronautical Engineering. That's another story of wanting to be like a fighter pilot, which obviously didn't happen. But as part of my course, I did a lot of like computer programming, and this was just as the internet was kind of getting really big. So Google wasn't even a thing when I started university, and let alone things like Facebook and Instagram and all the other major things that we see now. But yeah, after finishing university, I ended up working at Hewlett Packard, specializing in their CRM team. That was my first kind of dive into marketing, and definitely stumbled into it really from very start of my career. And it was a great experience being client side. Back then in 2002 when I first joined, excited about being able to measure like an email click or a bounce. And then from there, I first kind of went to an ad tech vendor in 2007. And I've been kind of vendor side up until last year, really. So, 15 years on a variety of AdTech and MarTech vendors. And yeah, I just kind of, as I think I mentioned, I stumbled into it from the start, wanting to, progress on like my development skills. Originally, I was like a front end and back end developer, a lot of engineering, always around kind of marketing, but specialized in like BI teams and implementations. And more recently, that's kind of specialized in more of like solutions engineering and architecture. But I think that back end, that developer background served me in great experience of where I am now. And yeah, I think as you mentioned, we're going into a bit more, but most recently now as a head up a technology consulting team at Loop Horizon. So having that whole background of being a developer and engineer, being client side, then being vendor side, I feel like I've had a great kind of experience across the whole ecosystem and all the different aspects, whether it's the buy side, sell side, AdTech, MarTech. So yeah, here I am 20 years later, and it's things are very different from when I very first started. But I think that's what makes it a great and exciting place and industry to be in. Things are always changing and evolving.
Totally agree. Massively dynamic, isn't it? I mean, you've been in it for twice as long as I have, but even just in the time I've been there is an amazing change. Do you still on the side do a bit of programming stuff, or is that long? Has that been put on the shelf?
Sometimes less. I probably don't need to do it like day to day for like my current role, but I've always been a bit of a tech geek and a passion. I've always just maybe chip away and explore the latest technologies. But now, within like Loop Horizon, we have specialist people that may need to do like some programming or some custom implementation or other things. So I might, dip my toes in that water still, and sometimes just can't help it.
Yeah. And looking back on it, you touched upon it there. I think some of the best, and I do put you in the same category, sort of pre-sales or solutions people have that kind of technical confidence. Do you think that stood you in great stead when you've been in these deeply complex discussions and meetings with prospects?
Yeah, 100%. I think having that really like deep engineering or developer kind of background, and then now being more of that consultant, like solutions architect position, I can find it, because I've got that background, I can find it easier to translate what quite be complicated, deep technical discussions up to a higher level for more like business focused people. So being able to tailor a discussion around the right audience to make it easy to understand and comprehend, I think. And having been in the shoes on a client side, or having been like an engineer that needs to do an implementation, I kind of understand the complexities and challenges that go from the top level conversations down to like the low level kind of engineers that may need to be actually doing some of that deep end kind of work.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I guess like to get to know you a little bit better, I did more so than I already did, but I looked at your profile and it stated, I think in 2015 you had a bit of a work sabbatical. Is that right?
I did, yeah. I took a year off. I think I've been at my current company for 7 years
Yeah.
at that point in time, and I was kind of fortunate. I didn't have at a position where I didn't have many commitments, like no kids, no wife, no mortgage, and it was felt like an opportunity where I just wanted to go take a break, kind of explore, go see like a new part of the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, took a year off. Went off to Southeast Asia, spent some time in Thailand. Lived on a tiny tropical island, which was like an amazing experience. But I was very conscious I could get there trapped too long. So I think a year was just about the right amount of time where, haven't been out of the industry for too long. It was easy to slot back in. But yeah, I've always said to, lots of friends and colleagues, if, perhaps especially when they're younger as well, take the opportunity to do things like that when you can, just to have that new perspective, both on maybe your career and also your personal life, see like new cultures and work out what's really important to yourself. It's definitely really, really valuable and something I definitely recommend.
Totally. And something I didn't quite have enough money to go for 12 months. I've sort of burnt through that quite quickly, but I was away for 6.
Yeah.
I had an amazing time also around Southeast Asia and Australia. Certainly a story for another time and a beer, I think, that one. But yeah, I guess, great life experience. And also, just from a hobby perspective, apart from, the fighter pilot bit, which I didn't know about, black belt and Taekwondo. Was it in the represented England, right? In the Taekwondo Championships? Tell us a little bit about that.
I did, yeah. I've always been really loved like kind of martial arts from watching The Karate Kid back in the 80s and like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, and
Yeah.
always wanted to get into it. Then just university, it felt like I was going to be at university 4 years. I was at Loughborough, which is massive for sports, as you might kind of know.
Yeah.
They had like every martial art available there to try, and I just tried out all of them. Taekwondo was like the favorite, and it became almost as important to me as like get my degree, to be honest, at university, like trying to get my black belt at the end of my 4 years. But yeah, kind of just really got into it. I was kind of had a fantastic instructor who also was one of like the best in the country and successful in international competitions, and had the opportunity to go represent England, as you mentioned there, in the World Championships in Italy. Managed to win a gold medal as well, which is definitely one of my proudest achievements.
Amazing.
Yeah, I feel a bit, I think, so this is going back, over 20 years now. Now Taekwondo is quite a well-established Olympic sport, and yeah. Back when I did it, it wasn't quite an Olympic sport, so who knows what might have kind of happened if things were a bit different. But yeah, unfortunately, I think I did finish university, and then I took a year off and went to Australia, and I never really kind of got back into it, which is perhaps a bit of a regret. But your life always goes in different directions.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And are your kids are you helping them get into it, or they're a bit young?
Yeah, I think I'd love for my daughter to get into Taekwondo. She's only 4 at the moment. Just being a daughter, I'm even maybe very protective and want to be confident in that self-defense. But I think she needs to be a little bit older. But
Yeah, sure.
I'll be pushing her into that for sure, I think.
Yeah, cool. Like lovely hidden hobbies and amazing achievements woven in there.
Yeah.
So hey, look, just going back to obviously the topic that we want to discuss. Just in terms of the companies. So you mentioned there you spent maybe 15 years working across the vendor landscape. So you work for some really cool vendors. Can you were they deliberate moves? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about the technology and the kind of mindset about moving to the places you did and why? That would be quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, my very first kind of vendor I went to was it was known as ValueClick back at the time. It's now Conversant, and now kind of part of become part of like the Ep7 group. But back then, I kind of worked for Commission Junction, which was, I think, still is the leading affiliate network. It was partly like an opportunity to move away from client side, live and work in London, and an opportunity at this company presented itself, and it was a great fit for what I was looking for with my skill set. And then I was fortunate, part of that company, they had multiple different technologies and divisions. So along with affiliate marketing, they had like display, price comparison, search, paid media. So I had an opportunity to learn about all those different technologies, and they ticked a whole section of like the ad tech space. I was saying I was there for several years and kind of growed and kind of increased my skill set. Worked on a variety of different technologies, front end, back end. Worked with some amazing clients as well at the forefront of what was possible in kind of ad tech. Then from there, I had my sabbatical year off, and then as I was leaving, like programmatic was becoming the big new thing. So I think when I came back from a year off, opportunity presented itself to get into programmatic. I worked for Rubicon Project, now known as Magnite, and one of the leading SSPs. And so that was like the new and emerging part of kind of ad tech, which I was really keen to get involved with. Then I was there for kind of multiple years, a few different kind of vendors in that space as well. And then, as you know, kind of more recently shifted more into MarTech. So there's always been this overlap between AdTech and MarTech. But in 2021, I joined mParticle as probably my first pure MarTech vendor, and I found that fascinating, having that predominantly ad tech background, but now focusing more on kind of MarTech. And I think my background's enabled me to know like the art of the possible, of how all these different technology platforms can come together, how ad tech interacts with MarTech. So a lot of I've tried to make sure my experience has covered multiple different aspects of the ecosystem, and that's kind of given me I think it's fairly unique perspective of kind of where I've been and the different companies I've been at, and I think that stands me in kind of great stead to be able to advise clients on the whole kind of picture of everything like my background's been able to cover, from both deep technical conversations to strategic kind of marketing advice, or helping clients know what's possible and the path to hopefully achieve it.
No, definitely. I mean, a lot's changed, isn't it, over that sort of whistle stop tour that you've just given there, but within the space. I mean, the convergence of I see people moving, some successfully, but I think there is a definitely a transition to get into MarTech. Some people manage to navigate that. Some people struggle a little bit. But I mean, just specifically to AdTech, I mean, I know there's all of the sort of cookie situation that I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, but how have you seen that space evolve and change, like from a high level perspective? Like, what are the kind of major challenges that you saw when you were in the market?
Yeah, I mean, so going back from perhaps when I first went to an ad tech vendor 15 years ago, it feels like everything has changed really. I mean, a lot of things were maybe all happened with like a simple like tag snippet that you shoved on your web page, and then you didn't really perhaps need to worry about certainly didn't need to worry much about privacy as you do kind of nowadays. As technology has evolved, the ease of collecting kind of mass data, to being able to process that, gather intelligence, it's just dramatically shifted, what's kind of possible and how to think about advertising and how to think about kind of marketing. Being able to automate data collection, things like looking to programmatically buy ad space, impressions based on things make decisions in milliseconds. It's completely evolved from when I first started, and continues to do so.
Do you still have a keen eye on what's going on in that space, even though you've kind of gone maybe one or two steps removed now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it feels like a bubble that once you're in, you'll always be a part of, and stay very close to it through like my network of contacts, and a lot of things that I still do now definitely crosses over into there. It could be whilst it's more kind of MarTech, you definitely always kind of interactions into AdTech. So I like to think I still stay very on top of the trends and what's happening there, and it's highly relevant for the things I'm still doing today.
Yeah. Do you think that increased sort of focus around privacy and compliance that you touched upon there, do you think that helped you when you moved into like customer data, which is obviously that's one of the like one of the major topics, I'd imagine. Do you think that those learnings set you up for success in that space better than maybe somebody else?
Absolutely, yeah. I think definitely being part of programmatic and thinking about how can things like SSPs and DSPs adapt to the change in regulation and compliance. Things like GDPR coming up. That was they were having to plan for that. An early stage, knowing that it was coming, and then GDPR actually kind of landing, and then what things like different browsers and technologies have started to regulate and enforce. It shifted so much about what ad tech needs to think about and consider, or what they can no longer do anymore, that they got away with for so long, or they were able to do. And then saying in kind of marketing as well, how that's maybe influencing more of a shift to focus on thinking about your first party data and shifting your strategies and adapting, and also maybe realizing that that's helping to push people to maximize new opportunities that maybe weren't perhaps a priority. So embracing what's possible now.
No, totally. I think a lot of product managers have made their money, haven't they? When all of those big shifts happened, GDPR and everything else. But I think that first party data obviously bleeds nicely into like what we're going to talk about. I'm sure you talk about it all the time, every day in your current company. I guess as we touched upon there, when we bumped into each other, you made the transition into mParticle very successfully into their sort of post sales team, into the MarTech space, sort of pure MarTech space in 2021. I mean, we're only in 2023, nearly the end, granted, but how have you kind of seen that space, like conversely to AdTech? How have you seen the MarTech space kind of change over that period? Over the period maybe you're at mParticle. I know you've left there now, but that would be maybe interesting to the listeners.
Yeah, so I think CDPs had already been around for a while before I joined on mParticle in 2021. But just in the last few years, it's feels like it's even more hot topic than what it was. But still, actually, probably not very well understood by a lot of people. It's quite a confusing marketplace if you're not an expert. A lot of people will kind of claim that they can perhaps do everything, and then you might need to look under the hood and think, well, actually, is this technology vendor the right for what I need? How can I impartially compare them against like somebody else? Yeah, I guess in terms of like the MarTech space, I think the art of what's possible now with a lot of the latest MarTech platforms, as a marketer, I think that's really exciting to be able to think about true one-to-one real-time personalization, giving your best experience to your customers, maximizing, where privacy and consent and permission allows, collecting everything you can, building a true 360 degree view of what your customer is doing, helping to drive kind of loyalty and brand affinity, and giving the best experience possible through what's possible with marketing technologies. I think things like AI and machine learning and is helping to just how that's maturing, just gives a lot of exciting opportunities for different user cases that clients can use to maximize marketing technology.
25 minutes in is the first time we've spoken about AI. Perfect. Right. What's your, like, go on, because it is such a big kind of buzz topic. I only need to just refresh my LinkedIn feed to see it just all over it. What's your personal take on it, or the application of it, or some of the customer use cases? Not in any detail, granted, but how are you seeing it being applied?
Yeah, I think it's hard to, you have to kind of dig through the hype a lot of times, but things like ChatGPT has obviously exploded in the last 12 months, and it's just become a lot more mainstream knowledge. It's driven a lot of fear in a lot of kind of different industries of what it may mean for kind of jobs, or replacing need for traditional positions. But I think in terms of like MarTech and AdTech, I think it's still a lot of maturity that we need to go through. But I think a lot of exciting opportunities. If it kind of embrace like the art of the possible, what it can do. If we think about, we talked about real-time personalization, but let's say you get a bit of content that you could rewrite in real time, utilizing this technology to personalize it for your customer to make it more kind of relevant. I think that there's a lot of interesting use cases, and been able to do things like just doing like real-time decisioning as well, kind of machine learning about actually what's the best thing I want to present to my customer who's on my site right now, delivering the right message at the right time to the right person, and utilizing advanced like AI and machine learning to give that best possible experience. It definitely needs to go through a lot of maturity. And there's a lot of hype about what you might want to do or may come in the future, and it's trying to remember what's going to be most relevant for clients to think about doing today, as well as maybe considering for future as well.
So your underlying feeling is excitement, as opposed to like not fear is the wrong word, but some people are a bit kind of nervous about the impact that it can have later down, either through jobs, as you touched upon, or other means. But are you kind of, in your environment, you're seeing really positive applications of it?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's it feels somewhat inevitable that this is how things are going, and it's and we should like embrace the opportunity that new technologies can provide. Definitely around AI. I totally appreciate with that. There's a lot of maybe fear and uncertainty. So I think as long as it's like kind of embraced and utilized in kind of positive ways, definitely in our sector, I think it opens up a lot of new exciting possibilities to explore that should maximize and embrace.
Huge growth area, isn't it? I'm personally really excited to see how that space evolves and changes, and like acquisitions to bolt things to get, like I know mParticle made an AI, I think some sort of AI acquisition, but how that can really kind of create some interesting additional functionality to already exciting suites of products. So
yeah, I was going to say you kind of touched on mParticle, but I think I've definitely seen a whole variety of MarTech vendors. Maybe it's not just necessity, but it feels like they're all adding like new features or kind of it's on their product roadmap to have like an AI capability, which is just enhances what you can do, helps automate things, just helps enrich and further empower what's possible with their tech stacks.
Yeah, they're really cool. The third-party cookie situation, I thought, like from a technical standpoint, and because you're dealing with CDPs and advertising and marketing discussions, like what's your view on that? Do you think it's actually going to, come into full force next summer? I think it is. Or do you think it's going to get kicked down the road a bit further? Like, what's your kind of take on how that's going to impact the world that we live in?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Definitely something we focus on a lot at Loop Horizon with our clients. So it feels, bit, I guess, a bit of if we look back, kind of where we are and how recap where we've kind of got to, what's kind of really happened. It was back in 2017 where Safari first, effectively blocked third-party cookies, and that was six years ago now. Obviously Safari was a limited amount of the browser market. I think around 30% in the UK and in the US. And so since then, third-party cookies have essentially been restricted, at least in that Safari market. And that didn't force a whole lot of change because you've still got that other 70% of the market, which technology companies could still utilize, where they were based around that third-party cookie. So there hasn't been maybe up until kind of historically there hasn't been that force or pressure, for those technology vendors to, need to build out an easy to implement alternative because they've still got that 70% of the market that could utilize, third party cookies. Then, as you mentioned there, next year, mid 2024, Google Chrome is saying that they will start to deprecate third party cookies, and they're about 50% of the browser market. So that combined with Safari, now you've got 80% of the browser market are no longer going to be able to, third-party cookies effectively gone, if you like. If that's 80% of the market, then things like Microsoft Edge likely to follow suit. So yeah, I think as it stands, I believe end of 2024 next year, third-party cookies could effectively be gone. We have seen things been pushed back in the past by Google, but I think there's definitely a pressure on the industry now to look at alternatives with what's coming up with Google Chrome, saying that we've already had it for Safari for some time now, and those are things like looking at your first-party data strategy. Looking to have maybe a CDP-centric solution, which is based on first-party data mechanisms to orchestrate your data. Lean into your first-party cookie strategies, looking to maximize the persistence, things like clean rooms and second-party data. So it's going to be a big impact. I think a lot of clients that we talk to now are already preparing for it or have prepared for it, and if they haven't, it definitely should be on their plans and roadmaps very, very quickly.
Do you feel like a lot of companies are fairly organised about it, or are they scrambling, given the time frame that we're talking about?
It's both definitely. Some who are kind of proactive, and maybe they've got like a clear kind of roadmap of what they need to do or where they want to get to. They're very well kind of positioned, and but there's definitely other ones which are scrambling. Maybe it's been things like Google Chrome, they've maybe pushed back deadlines or dates in the past, and they've maybe been a bit deprioritized and need to do this until maybe it's like essential. Then suddenly it could be like last minute, and then as you're saying that they're scrambling to think about what they do. And then I think if you're then under pressure, sometimes you might not make like the best decisions for like your long-term future solution. So it's I think there's a lot of clients need a lot of support in this area about what should be their strategy and the best plans that they should be making to migrate away from third-party cookies.
And I'd assume, without saying something so obvious, but I'd assume that kind of pressure, sort of macro changes in the space, play nicely into demand for things like your specialist services at like Loop Horizon or said company. Is that fair? Do you feel people are really like they're kind of looking for that expert guidance in times like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a small part, of like the broader thing that Loop Horizon that we're going to do, but definitely we have some real experts in that space who've maybe focused on this for a long time. We find more and more it's like other clients are looking for exactly the same thing. We've actually got like a webinar coming up next week that one of my colleagues is running, purely focused on this area. So we definitely find people want advice, they need help to understand it. What should they be thinking about? What should be their plans? What are their options? What do they have to do? What can wait? So it's definitely, as you're saying, a major thing that people know they have to prepare for and plan for now.
Where can people find that webinar if they would like to view it? Is it on the website, on your website, or?
I think it's on our homepage of loophorizon.com. I've been reposting it on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, you'll find it on the homepage of our website.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, that's really interesting. I guess we touched upon the third party piece there, but without naming any names, of course. But the major challenges, like, can you give us a little bit of background as to Loop Horizon, like the client base, like some of the sort of consistent themes you're seeing with your sort of customers and the problems that you're solving?
Yeah, so we have kind of a great team of experts who mostly all come from, well, it's been a mixture. Some have come from like client side, some come from vendor side, like myself. We have a team who've focused on like marketing strategy, more of the business focus side than my part of the business, which is more as a team of technology experts. I think that one of the biggest parts where we excel is we all come together as like a combined marketing strategy and then also technology consulting team. And a lot of the big projects we find ourselves doing with clients are large digital transformation journeys. So when a client's maybe on a historical legacy technology stack, they know that they need to make plans to migrate to a future-proof solution, maximizing the art of the latest marketing technologies. That's a pretty scary kind of undertaking. If you're not experts in all the different technologies that are out there, like how do you might be investing in in a 3-year contract for a major piece of technology. How do you know it's the best fit of everything that's out there? So we've often find we will help clients from maybe just understanding what is their architecture, audit and kind of discovery of what they're doing today. What do they focused on for doing tomorrow? From design, recommendations, vendor selection, architecture, implementation, ongoing maturity. That's more on the technology side, but then also your marketing strategy. How do you get your marketing team to maximize the opportunity that technology provides? Shifting the ways you work, how maybe you think about reporting or analytics or attribution. So it's the complete evolution or all that ecosystem of marketing technology, from thinking about what technologies exist to actually embedding them within your organization and maximizing the opportunity you provide. So the complete life cycle, if you like. And we've got dedicated team of experts that just have been in the client's shoes, have that kind of empathy. We've done what they need to do, and helping them on that digital transformation journey.
Do you always pick up these projects at the beginning, or do you kind of get brought in when some when they're like, oh my god, I don't know which one to pick, or like or does it vary? Like what's the kind of what's the stage where you're normally kind of engaged?
Yeah, it does vary. A lot of the clients that I kind of work on myself, it's that very early day kind of discovery. Right. We need to think about what is our 3-year plan. Sometimes this may be centered around something like a customer data platform solution. That's, a major investment and decision or change in how they've previously done things. So then how do they think about how that affects everything else around their technology stack, both sources, destinations, how can that meet like business priorities? And then, there might be other clients who, they might have a good solution in place, and there might just be a particular part of a technology solution they want help with. Maybe it's like analytics, or maybe it could be things like a CMP decision. It could just be like identity resolution piece. But a lot of clients need help with everything, and then they want somebody like a Loop Horizon to help guide them on that path, and for us to stay on board for multiple years and be their expert team of consultants. Maybe also implementing that technology for them as well, where they need that support too.
Trusted advisor, as you say, because these are expensive decisions that they're making, and if they get them wrong, it can be that very expensive and damaging, can't it? So I totally see, and when we talk about it in a minute, but I can totally see the value in what the services that you guys are delivering. If you just rewind a little bit, you talked a little bit about clean rooms, which is an area, which is something that I'm like quite interested in, just because I see some vendors popping up that are doing some cool stuff. Is that a topic which you cover with your clients regularly, or is it like an emerging thing that you're seeing? Like what's happening there?
Yeah, it's probably more of an emerging thing. I think it's, but it does seem to be coming up more and more, kind of often in topics of conversation. And something, a lot of technology vendors as well, maybe adding that as an additional bow to what they offer as well. For some clients, it's, maybe kind of not relevant right now, but it could open up some exciting possibilities of how they could utilize that, and, use cases it may unlock. So yeah, I think we do see it coming up more and more as time goes on.
Am I right in thinking it's like a privacy? It's like a privacy kind of a way of cleaning the data in a privacy compliant way, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I guess there's multiple different applications of it. It could be you have some really interesting insights into your customers, and you want to use that to share with like a third party, but you need to make sure it's it's clean. You've stripped out any PII data from it. They can gather like maybe the insights that you shared, or you're willing to share that with a third party for them to go execute on a campaign for targeting, but it's all done in a compliant manner where you're not sharing PII data. You make sure it's compliant from a privacy standpoint, and they have some unique technologies which make that kind of possible. And at the same time, you may also want to kind of receive some really interesting data from other parties and ingest that into your platform. But again, that's done in a privacy compliant way where you're not putting any personal identifiable information at risk.
Yeah, cool. Something to keep an eye on, I think. We touched upon the CD. I mean, you're coming from the CDP space, being mParticle, but we've spoken about CDP space a lot because of the hype around it, I guess. Obviously, there's lots of players. The marketing around that is somewhat similar, but I guess a lot of them do quite different things. But how do you view that space in terms of fragmentation? What's your kind of perspective from a Loop Horizon perspective?
Yeah, it's so a lot of the conversation, definitely, kind of my team might be around like CDPs in particular. That's kind of some of the expertise that I've kind of had recently with my previous kind of role. And for clients, I think it's a very confusing kind of market. They'll often be pitched to from a lot of kind of vendors who all say that they can do the same thing, or say that they can do everything that you need. So as a client, it's confusing to understand which one is really like the best for me. There's different categories of CDPs. There's new concepts coming out or being talked about, things like composable CDPs or even like vendors who maybe they weren't traditionally a CDP, but they're now like reinventing themselves as a CDP, which can be further confusing if you don't perhaps really know what's going on under the hood, from a technology point of view. We sometimes try to simplify things to clients where, you should perhaps think about either building your own CDP, which very few clients should perhaps really think about doing that. Do you want to buy like CDP outright, or may you want to compose a CDP? So you have maybe a hybrid of a lightweight CDP and then other things that maybe you want to build out proprietary, and different things will be suitable for different clients depending on the needs of their business. But it's the markets continue to evolve and kind of mature. You mentioned there about, I think you mentioned previously about some AI acquisitions, that the CDP vendors are having. They're looking to, no one's sitting still. They're all enhancing their technology, what they can offer, the features that they can do. So it's constantly evolving. So as a client, it's hard to perhaps kind of keep up and know what is best for them, what's kind of relevant, what different categories should they consider, what's the most important features which unlock the most value for them. And I think that's where, I kind of enjoy being in a position, having been that vendor side, being in a vendor agnostic position now to help educate clients on the art of the possible and what they should think about, helping them identify what should be the priorities and what should they consider.
Yeah, I totally see it. I think anybody that is watching this and doesn't know the CDP space, but your old talking about the evolution of the CDP space, your old CEO MK has quite some strong opinions about some bits that are going on. I follow him on like Twitter and a few other things. I think the reverse ETL discussion, composable CDPs, high touch, all of that kind of discussion that they're having, obviously at a much higher level, is fascinating to watch and unfold, like even just on LinkedIn, just in an open forum like that. So God knows what it's like, behind closed doors. But yeah, really, really fascinating for people, trying to cut through the noise, trying to be disruptive, thinking about stuff in different ways. And then you're seeing all of these kind of, like I said, about high touch, like Rudder Stack, some of these other kind of cool companies that are popping up that suddenly getting 50 million to try and exploit that chink in the armor, if you will. Okay, cool. You touched upon it there, but I think it's interesting because you are in such like an empowered position, your role with these clients that have sizable budgets. I think there's something like I think there was 11,000 MarTech companies out there, like last on the chief MarTech. So huge noise, lots of sales team that want to push their own product. How do you feel like when you're sat with these CMOs or people involved in these projects? How do you feel how do you feel they feel like? And it must be a really difficult job for them to actually work out, as you say, what is actually best for them.
Yeah, I think sometimes it feels like a CMO needs to be like a CTO as well at the moment, but they need to be technical experts to know what's going to be the best marketing technology tools to fit their systems. And all these MarTech solutions, CDP is definitely one of them, along with kind of more. They try to help marketing teams and and CMOs' objectives of maybe having more autonomy and not being dependent on their own internal IT teams or engineering teams to be able to integrate marketing technology systems. So things for a CDP centric solution, a marketing team might be able to independently unplug a MarTech vendor, plug in like a new one, and do that on demand. So that maybe makes it sound simple, but as we're kind of saying there, I think for a CMO, there's a lot of pressure to think about what is like the technology kind of roadmap for what they want to both achieve like today, but also tomorrow, and making sure that's future proofed. We mentioned it before, but making long-term investments on particular technology systems, it's kind of paramount importance that it kind of meets your own kind of roadmap within what your business is trying to do, and it's future proofed for what you want to be able to focus on in the years ahead. And it's a lot of them need a lot of kind of guidance or kind of expertise, because as you're saying, there's so many different technologies out there, new ones springing up all the time. How do you have the time to kind of review them all and kind of compare them and work out kind of what's best, along with what you've also got to focus on for like your own business. It's a perhaps a completely different position to what it was in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I guess you guys are a kind of medium-sized, small to medium-sized business, being Loop Horizon, but growing very, very quickly, which is super exciting. And for all the reasons we talked about, I can just clear line of sight into why. I guess with in the current climate, with sort of somewhat limited resources, right? Everybody's like watching the pound and the dollars and the euros. How do you go about sort of tackling what is quite an exciting, as a business, maybe, I know you're not in sales, but as a business, how do you go about sort of tackling sort of the EMEA market opportunity for your business?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe both kind of where I am now and previous kind of roles I've been in. I think, and as you know as well, like the EMEA market is there's so many different parts of it. I think and I've worked with a variety of clients been based in different parts of kind of Europe in kind of my various kind of roles. You have some parts. I've been in London. I've worked with majority of maybe UK clients. I worked with a lot of clients based in the Nordics, and Nordics is a region which I always felt was quite advanced and maybe at the cutting edge of what's possible and embracing new technologies. Then you have other parts of Europe which are perhaps further behind. Technologies are less understood, or so it's always trying to make sure you're presenting like the relevant solutions for that particular needs of the market. And understanding what is the market in the Pacific countries. In Europe, it's definitely not one solution fits all, or kind of one approach works for one part of Europe is going to work the same for another. It's definitely need to have that specific expertise in that area to understand what's the best solution possible.
That's really, I didn't think about it like that. So you're saying, like, especially what you're doing, which is sort of bleeding edge stuff, the Nordics are like early adopters, whereas maybe like presenting something that's really shiny and new, but nobody knows about it in Germany, probably isn't the right kind of play necessarily, because they might be a little bit more risk adverse, like naturally. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there'll be certain regions where you just have a lot more startups, coming up, or digital first businesses that maybe don't have any of the issues of like an older legacy kind of company, where they can just create, design a MarTech stack from scratch and maximize the opportunity without any major like kind of migration issues. So there could be like brand new clients that I'm speaking to who just getting started, and that they don't have that kind of headache of a digital transformation. They can start from scratch and put like a best of breed stack solution in place. But yeah, and obviously you get those new companies can happen in any country or region. But yeah, the Nordics has definitely been an interesting one.
I've heard that from a few people. I think it's really interesting, and you can see why when I speak on the sales side, some of the bigger deals come out of that region. Yeah, no, that's cool. I guess conversely, are there any, maybe you've already answered it, but are there any major common mistakes that you see people within the environments you've been in around Europe?
Yeah, I don't know. I think see in recent times with like kind of COVID and the shift to like a more of a hybrid remote kind of working, I think it's there's probably less expectancy to have perhaps members of your team in the countries for the customers that you're speaking to. It's a lot more commonplace now just to jump on a virtual kind of meeting. They don't always expect you to turn up in person. Sometimes prefer that you don't, because they've got their own teams that are quite fragmented in different countries, different offices, working from home. So I think that's kind of made it far easier to think about scaling teams where actually they could be based. They don't have to be in a particular country for a particular client. Obviously, there's always going to be like sometimes there's no replacing actually getting together in person, like physically, to build like a rapport with a client and a customer. But at the same time, I think it's easier to think about scaling your teams in this kind of new world that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. And on that personally, because you've built some pretty interesting teams in the past, like how have you gone about, in the world we live in today, which, as you say there, almost globally, you get the pick of the bunch, right? If you are a dispersed working environment, how do you go about identifying, sort of attracting and retaining top talent for your teams in the past?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of like identifying kind of talent, I think I've got such a great kind of network of people from the variety of places I've kind of worked at and where they're now working at. So that's always place I'll go to first, for any kind of recommendations I know through my trusted network, yourself included. Attracting talent and retaining talent is something I've always felt very passionate about, as I've kind of built different teams in different businesses, of trying to go above and beyond the people that I look after in my team, to give them that opportunity to excel, give them that opportunity to grow and develop and to shine. I take a lot of pride in allowing my team members to progress their careers and giving them the opportunity to do that. And I think if you look after them, they'll work hard for you, and you'll reap the rewards and the benefits. And I think that's another part of what I try to do myself in terms of like attracting talent as well, is like pitch that this is how I like to, what I'm looking for, and this is how I expect, or what I want from my team members, and what you can expect in return from me as a manager.
Yeah, it's great. Proper partnership. I like it. Okay, I mean the dispersed office. I'm can't remember what you guys are. Do you go into the office a couple of days a week, or what's the Loop Horizon setup?
Yeah, so we do have like multiple offices, in different parts of the world. We're predominantly UK based. I myself, I go into our Kew Gardens office, twice a week. We have some members of the team who do like to be there every day, perhaps live locally, some work remotely. So it's flexible and what works best for the employee. I think that's how you have to be kind of nowadays somewhat.
Yeah.
I like to get my team all together at least like one day a week. We fortunately all kind of live around London, but I think it's hard to replace, kind of maybe that team spirit that you kind of get through meeting up in person, kind of going out for a drink or a coffee, or kind of grabbing lunch. If you're only ever having virtual meetings, it's hard to kind of replicate that connection that you kind of have. But at the same time, I think it's for myself, as a kind of a family man, it makes it a lot easier to be able to do things like the school run. And I think companies having to be kind of flexible, kind of can make it. Obviously, it depends on the needs of the person, but I think giving your employees that flexibility on how they choose to work, you can still get the best out of them. They just trying to find that right balance of what works for them and what works for you. I myself, still like to make sure we get together in person at least once a week. I think that's a good balance that works for us.
Yeah. Sorry, I got some in my throat. I'm seeing that just from a recruitment standpoint. There's schools that everybody seems to be a bit divided with that. I'm definitely aligned with you. I think like there's gone are the days where you can get people in 5 days a week. I think you have to understand people have wants and needs and have sort of, created life away from work somewhat and are used to having that kind of flexibility that you mentioned.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I feel like, I'm different part of like my career now. If I look back when I was just getting started, I think I feel if I didn't have, I think I was able to grow as quickly and learn as what I did because I probably was in that office environment a lot more kind of regularly. Yeah. I think if you're like, maybe a brand new kind of grad just coming into this like sector, if I'm thinking if you're maybe working from home 4 days a week, only in the office once a day, it's hard for you to have those, impromptu conversations with other members of the team that you normally wouldn't have. You can't kind of replicate that if you're at home working virtually. So I think it depends on maybe that what level people are or how much they need to learn or how much mentoring that they may need to do. It's I think it's important to find that right balance. I think.
Yep. Again, totally agree. I mean, I probably wouldn't be still in recruitment in like 10 years on if I was working remotely from the start. You need sometimes need to put somebody to put their arm around you and come for a walk with you around the block when you don't quite get the decision you want in certain situations or whatever. I do feel for the more junior people, but again, there's another episode we did. That's why I thought it was so important to talk about sales enablement. And the boom of that, and people being sort of upskilled and onboarded correctly, because as companies scale in a remote setting, that's just ever so difficult to do right. But that's great kind of insight into the Loop Horizon setup. I guess as somebody close to technology, as you mentioned, are there any other little pockets of great areas that we should keep an eye out that you're seeing some hype around apart from the AI stuff, that we mentioned?
I think a big thing that we've seen with some clients is just with the latest technology and like the art of the possible, being able to, where it's relevant for a particular client, being able to have more connection between like online and offline experiences. Okay. So, you might have a really loyal customer who's kind of visiting your website kind of regularly on your digital estate, but then they enter your physical store, and they've got that affinity with your brand and they're loyal, and where you have consent and permission and privacy, kind of allows things like geolocation, allow them to give them that continuing that personalized digital experience in that physical experience. There's some sports clients that I've had been able to work with in the past and kind of currently, and you can, especially with sports, maximize that emotional investment like a fan may have in the sport or a particular team that they're following or they're going to see play, and just driving further loyalty by enhancing that experience, personalizing it based on what that they like to do or how they invest, and utilizing that to provide like incremental kind of revenue, personalized kind of offers or incentives for them to maybe buy some merchandise. I think that's more and more important, and if they've got the right technology stack in place, great user cases to look to achieve, to giving the best possible experience they can to their customers. And
that's cool. I'm going to do a bit more research. I know I was chatting to somebody yesterday about a startup that they were involved with that did sort of similar. It was the idea you go into the shop, if you like a particular type of coffee, within the privacy compliant way. Starbucks know you like a particular coffee, they already order it for you before you even got to the counter. He was saying that kind of crashed, unfortunately, because GDPR came in and they couldn't get the product off the ground. But I think that notion of people knowing your preferences on stuff before you've even like given them sort of verbal on that is amazing, really. Super cool.
Yeah, I think it's especially from maybe kind of looking back at my ad tech days where retargeting was a thing. I think as a kind of an end user, you got quite spooked about that, thinking why am I being pinged this highly relevant kind of ad? Someone's like following me around like the web, and it's it's kind of trying to find that right balance of not scaring people, but then, as you're saying, maybe in a MarTech kind of application of actually I know all this thing about my customer because I have permission and they allow me, and it's all done in a privacy kind of compliant kind of way. Actually, I think customers as well, maybe they expect or kind of demand that better personalized experience, and they're have more loyalty and affinity to the brands that go that extra mile to give them that personalized experience. And I think if you're not doing that, you can be kind of left out, as your competitors do that bigger and better.
I think that's a great way to sort of round it out. I think, I agree with you. The consumer nowadays has no patience for people that are being or brands that are being irrelevant, so, that's a great way, I think, to kind of finish off the kind of the Q&A, if you will. I guess just to finish up, we're running way over, so sorry about that. It's totally my side, but just to kind of finish up, I've just got a little bit of fun and games just for the people that as I say don't know you, just to get a bit of insight into your personality, really. So, first answers that come into your head, please. No pausing, no big thinking time. But without further ado, favorite piece of tech or app you are using now?
I'm struggling with the first one. Favorite piece of tech or app? ChatGPT app. I'm addicted.
Okay, got the app. Yeah. Okay, cool. iOS or Android?
iOS all the way. Yeah,
all the way. Yeah, got your heart. Okay, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 phones, iPad. Yeah, Mac. Night at the disco, night at the restaurant.
Disco.
Oh, hey, okay. Favorite food?
Thai food. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Favorite movie?
Top Gun.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Favorite place that you visited on holiday or just visited in general?
Koh Tao. I visited there on a holiday in Thailand, so then I liked it so much that's why I kind of took a break and ended up living there for a whole year.
You lived on Koh Tao for a whole year?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, cool. I spent some time there as well. It's a cool place. What's your guilty pleasure, if you have one?
Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Okay, cool. If you had one superpower, what would it be and why?
Superpower. Fly, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Fly. Why? Just get anywhere I want really quickly.
Okay, cool. Last one. Obviously, we talked about privacy, compliance, and health and safety, all this kind of good stuff, right? But God forbid the house is burning down. Yeah, you've got one personal item you're able to save. What is it and why?
One personal item
that you're able to save.
Yeah. You make me choose between like my wife and my daughter.
No.
One item to save and why? I'd probably be the kind of iPhone because of I think it's got all my connections to everybody, being able to.
Yeah, fine. That's cool. Some people do actually say their wife or children, but some people also say iPhone. It's been a regular thing. That's cool. Yeah. Obviously, after the wife and children, it would be the iPhone. Of course, is probably the politically way to put it. Yeah. Great. Hey, look, great fun. Thanks for just taking just over the hour with us. Hopefully to our viewers that held some really good insight into James, what he's doing, Loop Horizon, the problems that they're solving. James, if anybody listening wants to kind of get in touch with you about the business or just about the topics that we discussed, how would you recommend they do that?
Yeah, feel free to just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest thing nowadays, isn't it? I'm sure I'll be tagged on this podcast.
Yeah.
Feel free to reach out, drop me a message. Happy to speak.
Yeah, perfect. And without too much spam from any recruiters, please. But what's your email address as well?
James.lamb, LAMB, at loophorizon.com.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully that's, been a good session for you, James. Really nice to see you as always. We'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon. Pleasure.